Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Above the Bar podcast, where each week we belly up to the bar with a new guest, find out what they do, who they are, and what makes them great. So sit back, relax, and enjoy. Alrighty, folks, welcome back to the Above the Bar podcast. It's your host, Sean. We have bellied up on this Turkey Eve. Hopefully you've got your bird is defrosted. My public service announcement will be do not drop a frozen turkey into a deep fryer. If you do, please make sure you have set up a camera with time-lapse video so that we can all watch the entire thing go down. And please ensure that you've done it outside because it will be all bad if you've done it inside. So again, there's my public service announcement. And those of you that are brining your turkey like me, you better have gotten it in the brine already because it's a little late in the day for that game. But here we are today, folks, and joining us from where we'll accept him. I mean, Buffalo beat him, so it's good. You know, he's out in that area. So we're talking today about why do men need a community? I think this is such an amazing topic. So joining us for this is I don't know. He'll have to explain to me if it's just founder, co-founder, El Jefe, El Presidente, what he likes to go by. But it's joining us all the way from. Are you in? We'll have to tell us if we're in that city or not. I'm not sure if he's even in that city. It's Mr. Mark Carey.
Yes, sir. What's up, Sean?
What's up, brother, man? So, are you? I should ask. Are you actually in Kansas City? Or you're just a Kansas City fan?
So, born and raised in Kansas City, went off to college, came back to Kansas City, met my wife, got married, all that type of stuff. Last year, almost a year ago, we moved down to Bentonville, Arkansas.
Arkansas?
Yep. So I'm not in Kansas City anymore.
Not in Kansas anymore, Toto.
No, not anymore. So
I will say this though. I served with a guy in the Marine Corps whose wife was from Kansas City. And this was in the days of like Christian Okoye, Kansas City, which I used to love to watch that guy run. But I try to think of who the linebacker was that hit him and ended his career. I just remember him coming through the line, and Christian Okoye used to run everyone over. The Nigerian Nightmare. If you don't know who he is, folks, go watch. You want to see a monster run? That dude's a monster. But he came through the hole one time, and there was a linebacker on the other side that just mashed him, and it was like the first time that Christian Okoye had ever been hit and somebody like stunned him. I remember it. And it was like, oh, he don't run the way he used to no more. Like it's not the same. But so Mark and I are going to be talking about why men need a community, what the reasoning behind that is. So make sure you've bellied up. Those of you that are joining us, have your drinks ready. But before we get too far, as always, folks, let's take care of some house cleaning. Over my right shoulder, we got the big board for Sticker and a Cause. If you've got your own podcast, you've got a band, you've got anything, I don't care what it is. You've got an underground D&D fight club where you guys roll 20-sided die to punch each other in the forehead. I don't care. You reach out to me on Facebook, LinkedIn, YouTube, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok. Our website is theabovethebarpodcast.com, and our email is abovethebarpodcast@gmail.com. Reach out to us. Let us know what it is. We'll read all about you live here on the air. Do you have the hand gesture set up on yours, Mark? I know you're looking like what the hell keeps going up. So
no.
just
I try to turn mine off. I don't know. Sometimes I don't know if it works.
No, you got to do the double thumbs up and see what it does. Just hold them up here for a minute.
Nothing.
Let's see. No. Actually, I keep mine on because then you can do this one too. This is my personal favorite. If it's not going to work, there it goes.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's pretty good, isn't it? So the next thing is we got to talk about our sponsors. That's Budget Blinds of East Greenbush, Budget Blinds of Hudson and Cooksaki, and Budget Blinds of Schoharie, New York. All up here in New York. Budget Blinds is America's largest window treatment company with over 1,500 franchises across America and Canada. They specialize in everything from shades, drapes, shutters, you name it. If it goes on a window, they got it. They can even do tint, folks. They have everything. And as we're coming here to the end of this month, if you're still in the capital region and you're in that East Greenbush, Hudson, Coxsackie, and Schoharie area, if you reach out to them, let them know that you're there to belly up to the bar. Their sale for this month is going to be 50% off of one window, 50% off of installation, and 50% off of shipping. And I'll go ahead and we can make the announcement here. Black Friday, if you reach out to them on Black Friday and you schedule your appointment, it's going to be 25% off of drapery. And for the month of December, they're doing 25% off of all motorized shades. That's right, motorized shades. Dude, Mark, have you ever seen motorized shades, like voice activated motorized shades?
Yeah, my parents got one. They have this massive window and they got motorized shades. Beautiful, amazing.
Is it not the coolest thing? Like, does it have the voice activation?
No, it's just a remote.
Dude, when you got the voice activation, you can be like, okay, I got one next to me. I'm not going to activate it. And you say the thing and you tell it what window, and it's like, raising living room window 1. It's some straight Star Trek shit. So you got to love it. So make sure you're reaching out to your budget blinds. And look, folks, as always, if you tell them you're there to belly up to the bar, whatever sale they got going off, you tell them you're there to belly up to the bar, they're going to give you an extra 5% off. So make sure you're reaching out to them. And for those of you that are already watching us, if you have questions, you're interested in what Mark's got going on, you want to get a little bit more in depth, make sure you're dropping us comments in here. Make sure you're liking and sharing this, sharing it out to all your social media. Give it a like and a follow right now. It makes a difference. Truly, truly does. It's all right, Mr. Mark. How are you today?
I'm actually had a pretty busy day, but I'm wonderful. Holiday tomorrow.
It is.
Friday, plan to do nothing. So
now, question is before we get into this, because we are talking about why do men need a community, I think and I know you've been doing this now? Real quick, I'm going to give the quick down and dirty. You tell me if I get anything wrong here.
Okay.
14 years of doing this. You're a licensed professional counselor. You run a private practice. But you were kind of feeling a little burnt out, and then you kind of went into more of this evolution of growth for men and men's communication. Am I pretty close?
Yeah, you're right on. So got burnt out of the medical model, got burnt out of so many people telling me I saved their lives or changed their lives for that measly insurance payment. And I said, I can bring more value than this. I can get out of the structure and put on amazing retreats. I can do all kinds of adventure stuff and really get after it and really help people. And part of it's getting out of the sticky and getting into the fun.
Now, what do you mean by getting out of the sticky and getting into the fun?
Well, oftentimes in private practice, mental health, that type of thing, I'm helping people recover, repair, that type of thing. And I need a good balance in my life. I like to create, the positive too. I can help you heal, but I also love to help you elevate in the fun stuff. And it's great when we're doing really well. How can we do even better? So there's the good mix there for me.
Nice.
Yeah.
Now, I'm always curious when people, so I'm an entrepreneur myself, going into private practice. That's an entrepreneurial thing.
Yep.
It's always been super interesting to me. What was that conversation like though with your wife when you go from, hey babe, so I got this job, I'm working in the medical field, I've got insurance, I've got everything we need. Let's go ahead and piss that away. I feel like I can do way better at this. Oh, and by the way, I don't have a check yet for it. Like what was that? I always love hearing this part of the conversation.
Yeah, and I wish we had one of those conversations. We didn't have one because my wife's family, bunch of entrepreneurs, owned restaurants, electrician, was general contractor. My dad, electrician, owned his own business, everything else. So it kind of just, we always knew she worked for herself. I was working for my dad through college. Out of college, went straight to private practice, started learning, and we just kind of knew that that was the place for us, entrepreneurship.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So there's definitely been conversations throughout the process of like, oh shit, what are we doing? Like my daughter just broke her arm a couple weeks ago, and we just pay out of pocket. We don't have health insurance. We have a catastrophe plan if anything like really bad, but 2 years ago my son broke his arm and I just paid cash, worked down the price, and it cost me $500 is all.
Isn't it amazing? Like I mean, not to make a left turn into something totally different here, but you just mentioned something. I worked down the price and it cost me $500. Like now, for folks, if you don't know this, guess what? That pricing that they say, yeah, so the X-ray is $35,000, the ER visit's another $40,000. You have every right, like an insurance company does, to just kind of go, hey, I'm not paying that. What do you guys want? Like hearty handshake and a Happy Meal? Like, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
Is that kind of how I mean, obviously not a hearty shake and a Happy Meal, but
Yeah. I mean, I think this does go into the topic of advocating for yourself.
yes.
And the problem is a lot of these practices, these medical practices, they don't know what to do when you say, I want to pay cash pay. Doesn't mean you have to pay cash, but they say, well, this is the price. I said, no, that's the insurance price. What's the price if I pay you right now for this thing? And I usually have to work my way up to the manager or somebody else to
Right.
really have that conversation. Call around. I have to advocate. I call 5 different places. I say, what's this going to cost? They say, well, we bill insurance this. No. What's it going to cost? Get me to somebody that can tell me what it's going to cost, and let's figure this out.
See, I love it. That's all. And just like you said, and that's advocating for yourself, and that's a self-confidence thing, which really kind of rolls into what we're talking about, which is part of self-improvement, self-help, whoever you're into. I just finished the book, Do Epic Shit, which is phenomenal. If you have never, it's a super easy. I do a lot of audiobooks because I drive a lot. So super easy, like 3-4 hour audio book called Do Epic Shit. I listen to a lot of Brendan Bouchard, guys like that. But so going into this and kind of your approach, how did you kind of build the base then to kind of get other men to know, like, hey, let's build a community, and I'm going to show you how to build your community?
Yeah. So, okay, I can take this many different directions. Let's go with me first.
Yep.
I'll use myself as an example. I've always had community. So I was a wrestler in high school, collegiate athlete, wrestler in college.
Oh, nice.
And but wrestling ended when I graduated college. I wasn't going to Olympics. I went to, I wasn't that good, and so that was the first time where I lost my identity, my community, and I wasn't sure. And so, you know, and then I got super involved with my wife, and we had kids and all this other stuff. And it's like, okay, I'm still not feeling community. And then my wife said, hey, let's go to this couples retreat years ago. And I was like, okay, sure, I'm down. And we went, and there was this amazing part where the men and the women split off, and we had time separate, and there was conversations about, you need community, and this is what it looks like, and this is how you can create it. And that was when it was like, oh shit, like I've been missing this for 10 years.
Absolutely. God, I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, in former military, I imagine you do, right? You retire, and then it's like, who am I? Who am I around? Like, where's my brothers? And I mean, unfortunately, you're losing brothers from suicide and other stuff, and it's just rough. And so, yeah. And from there, it was just like I knew very young that I was a connector. I was a healer and connector.
What do you mean?
I just connect deeply with people very easily. It's like a superpower. If you've ever read like books around zone of genius, or like what just really is something you're really good at, and it comes somewhat naturally, but you also practice it.
Okay.
And I just learned that like I could connect with people really fast, really deep. And I was that's how I got into psychology. Was one, who's not fascinated with learning more about themselves and the people around them, and two, I was just really good at it. And so I lucked into that finding. I don't know how I got there, but I was like, hey, this is something I'm good at. And so I said, I'm the one who calls. I'm the one who texts friends. I'm the one who finds yeah, it finds the motivation to seek people out and keep that community because I know it serves me the best. And so that tends, I have a locals men's groups, I got virtual men's groups, I got all this stuff that I'm creating. And it's really about living a legendary and amazing life. Um, there's healing along the way, there's expansion, there's all this other stuff, but it's really, you know, when I'm gone, what am I leaving behind? Well, hopefully some money for my kids, whatever, but realistically, I'm leaving memories.
Yeah, I'm not
I'm
leaving anything.
impacting people.
My kids ain't
Do
getting
I?
shit. And my kids get nothing.
There
But
you
me and
go.
their mother are spending every dime.
That's fair too. I hope I make some investments and I hope I make so much money that I can't spend every dime, right? But
Oh
that's neither
gosh.
here nor there.
But it's interesting all the things you're talking about. And I think I would imagine you have a lot of athletes and a lot of prior, when I say prior service, I'm talking military service or
Mhm.
public service, like firefighters, police when they retire, because a lot of us absolutely I as soon as you were like wrestling was over and I didn't have it anymore, I knew exactly what you felt like that was a memory feeling that came back
Mhm.
of that last day in the Marine Corps. Like we had for me, I had my retirement ceremony, we had a big party, we came home, and the next day it was gone.
Yeah.
There was no more like, hey, I got to go throw the uniform on, and you part of it, it's like you're like, oh, I can go do some shit, and then you realize, and some of it have stayed reconnected to each other through
Mhm.
different ways, but I know exactly what you mean. So in some of these retreats and the way you're talking about it, and look, folks, if you're just joining us, and Nate, just so you understand, Nate, audiobooks are still reading because it's still learning, it's still processing. I'm going with that. You tell me the last any book other than Dr. Seuss you read, brother. I love Nate. Nate's birthday was yesterday, folks. So if you see Nate, make sure you sing him happy birthday. Um,
Happy
but
birthday, Nate.
he's another big Ravens fan. He actually has introduced me to other Ravens players. We've
Nice.
had on here. He knows a lot of them. But I definitely get that. So on some of these retreats, and folks, check out intimacyevolution.com if you want to know what Mark's got going on. If you've got questions, maybe you're looking for a group yourself and you're listening to us right now, send a message. We'll get you hooked up with those kind of things. But what are like, I'm trying to think of how, like some of these groups, like you said, like some of them are more adventure based.
Mhm.
Like, how does all that kind of stuff work?
So, something that's very strong in me and my desire and who I am is I love freedom. I love the feeling of freedom, the lightness, the 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 adventure part of exploring and everything like that. So I typically build in a lot of play in my retreats. And if we go on a hike, if we play games together, if we compete a little bit, if we um, you know relay races, whatever that looks like, I think there's a good for men. There's a good level of competition that's very healthy, and definitely that old school. There was 10 acres behind my house growing up, and we'd just go in the woods for hours, find stuff, make stuff. Sometimes cause a little problems, but um, just that idea of that's the idea of freedom for me, and that's what I try to bring to my retreats is this let's move through some heavy stuff and get to where you can really let go and feel like that kid version of yourself.
So the Autistic Super Channel, which is probably one of the smartest guys I know about wrestling, has just mentioned. He said, as an autistic individual, poet, and blogger, finding my community has been essential. Knowing whom to connect with is key to figuring out whom you are. Well, we know yours is wrestling, brother. We know that for a fact. Uh, but that's interesting that you say you find these different things. Do you find that? And I just as I'm hearing it, what are some of the reactions to some of these men, like when they first get together? Because I mean, you've got to get everybody to kind of communicate. And I think most of us, unless you have a personality like mine and maybe your own, where I'm like, I don't give a shit. I'm gonna say hello to everybody. We gonna figure it out, or we're just gonna hate each other. Like how are like do you start to see them, and what, maybe this is a better question because I think as I talk, what point do you see them kind of that gelling where they're like, oh, we're all working together, we're all communicating, we're all becoming part of our new community?
Yeah. So I think it really comes. So let's talk about a psychological concept real quick. We're going to kind of, and then we'll come right back to this. So ex- experiential bonding, meaning doing something together. So, and then if you increase the intensity of emotion with it, right? If we go jump out of a plane together, now we did something together and there's an intense emotion. Um, right now we're bonding in a way that we both went through something, right? And you know that with the military,
Oh, absolutely.
or
Yeah.
one of the hardest practices I ever had, and these are my brothers, and we all went through it and we survived. And shit, one day I lost 12 pounds and I wasn't trying to, and I ended up in the hospital, like IVs hooked up to me. And it's like that was a grueling, torturing experience. And so the idea is to create, if you really want to create fast bonds, you put through people through experiences. And we don't want it traumatic bonding. We don't want to.
Especially trauma without the trauma bonding.
Yes, we want to. We don't want the trauma, but we want vulnerability to be high. We want the ability to show yourself fully. And so, usually in like a retreat or like an open men's group, even there's an activity to start that promotes this. And I just guide people through going through something that might be a little challenging. At the same time, it's like, oh, that guy said something I can connect with.
I love that.
Yeah. And so, and you got guys that warm up at different rates. Some people jump right in. Other guys are like, it's a, after the first day is when they really get into it, and that's okay. We're all different.
It's interesting because I just feel like, I mean, especially if I was, going to a retreat, like I said, hey, I need this. I would feel like, me personally, I would be like, all right, I got to be front and center, move to the front. Like my money's on, it is on the table here. Like I'm doing this to get better at whatever that better is for me. Like, do you ever see folks that like they go through this whole process, but yet they're still hanging back where you're like, all right, like something's going on here?
Yeah, definitely. There are times I've seen that and I try to intervene, or I also just take a deep breath and say, this is part of their process. Not everyone can move. And sometimes there's this weird experience where everyone's having this like really big experience, but this one guy isn't. And it's like, okay, something's happening here. And I have to trust. And maybe this is like some spiritual idea of like trust in the higher power, if you will, or maybe you don't believe in that, and that's fine too. But trust that this person is getting exactly what they need out of this in this exact moment. Because maybe what other people are getting out is not what they need right now, and who am I to judge what they need? And so there's this like surrendering as a the professional, and as the leader and the guide. There's like a surrendering of like, okay, I'm going to check in on this person, and this might be exactly what they need. They might need to feel like, oh wow, everybody else is having this massive experience and I'm not. Let's go deeper.
It's interesting. It's like kind of just like, you good? Yep. And then just step away from it and let it do its thing.
Yeah.
Now, with these, and Nate's always going to bring up food. That's why he's not jumping out of any airplanes. Not if they've got still peanuts and pretzels for him. So he ain't jumping out and on. But he brings up the thing about, what your comfort food and all this. But I think food has kind of become a new community for a lot of men. I was
Mm-hmm.
just talking with somebody recently that I think our generation of men do more cooking than our fathers ever did. Dad was like, carve the turkey, maybe make the burgers and hot dogs. We now are like, I'm doing 80% of Thanksgiving is going to be
Yeah.
on me. it's a different thing. So if somebody wasn't in your area out in Arkansas or the different areas that you're doing these retreats at, what are some of the things that they can build their own communities? Because the first thing that came to mind to me was like, you know what? Grilling is a man's community. Like in your
Mhm.
neighborhood, if you're grilling, like we all kind of gravitate to. So how's that burger going, man? When's the last time you flipped them? We want to, kind of grunt at each other. That Tim Allen, like, oh,
Yeah, I love that. That's
like we
so
want
good.
to kind of grunt at each other to figure out the hierarchy in this. And that's another question. But like, what are some of the things people can do to kind of build a community within their own?
I think the biggest thing you're hitting on right now is hobbies, activities, things for me, which men struggle with. We'll sacrifice for everyone else. There's this whole Mr. Nice Guy mentality and all this other stuff, but it really comes down to something you enjoy in hobbies. If you pick any hobby, you can find other people doing it, probably pretty close to you. So, Bentonville, Arkansas, mountain biking capital of the world.
Oh, really?
Yep.
I didn't-
Um, Millions of people biking. I'm on a Discord group with probably 30 guys. And that connection piece is biking.
Hmm.
And I think it gets even more interesting. Like, okay, now there's Facebook groups everywhere.
Right.
Grilling group. Okay, now we have this community, but what if we want more depth than just talking about our meat? And I don't mean, right? I think that's where it gets challenging. I think to find a community is pretty available. You just, it's a little bit of a crapshoot. You never know what you're going to get. And so the next big challenge is, okay, how do I take this community and get a little deeper and a little closer and a little more fulfillment out of it?
You bring up another thing with the community that I'm curious of. And I think for some of us, we're okay with this, but how do you approach people that as they're building this community as men, and I don't know if women do it. I assume they do. I think it's more human nature. We create a pecking order. We
Mm,
create a hierarchy of position within that community. For example, we'll just stay with the grill for a second. If you came to my house, well, these are my grills. This is my domain. And unless you were like 25 years older than me or Emeril Lagasse or Bobby Flay, I'm probably not going, like, I might listen to you, but you wouldn't be able to push that step above me. These are my grills. This is where I am in my domain. But how should men approach this? And I know folks, look, we're staying on why do men need a community and what are some of the values? And I think personally that's very important, that hierarchy. I do believe that. And if you want to know more, you want to know what Mark's got going on, it's intimacyevolution.com. But how should men feel or when they're getting into those communities and those are starting to kind of play out those positions like that?
yeah, I mean, if you're aware of it, like if you can see it happening, I think the biggest risk is when you don't see it and you feel like, and then all of a sudden conflicts happening, and you feel a certain way. Yeah, I mean, no one wants unsolicited advice. Like that's number one rule. You're talking about grilling. I come over to your grill and say, hey, you need to flip those burgers. And the immediate response is like,
I'll stab you with
screw
this.
you. Like, I'm going to flip you, MFer. Like, right. Like it's the same thing. I mean, it's about communication. It's like, hey, Sean, you ever thought about doing this? Are you open for some feedback from me?
Yeah,
Right. And then as soon as you say yes, now it's not unsolicited, it's solicited. And now you've already okayed it. And so your defenses are down.
that's a
And
great idea.
so some of it's about like communication. And it's like, you know, if you want to break through that pecking order, talking about it, like, hey man, it seems like you know what you're doing grilling meats. I may not know as much as you, but I did read this thing the other day. Do you want to hear about it? And it's like, and if you say yeah, if you say no, I don't want to hear about it, great, cool, whatever. Maybe I got the trick that you don't have any clue about, but You don't want to hear about it. That's on you.
And I love that idea, that approach. But and with all this, something that just came to mind to me, how much has, the social abuse, there's another word I have for it, the social abuse of typical male activities, things that we grew up with, like
Mhm.
dad fixed cars, you know, or in my case, my dad knew how to find. My dad would be the guy who would tell you, I'm not fixing those things because then I'm taking food off of somebody else's table. But my dad was, like you said, my dad knew how to build relationships, how to make friendships, and he knew everybody. He always knew somebody who did something.
Yeah.
He was a networker before we had that word networking. So, how has a lot of these things where in society, you know, my daughter can fix a car. Well, that's great. Your one daughter fixes a car. No one says she can't fix a car, but why are we downplaying a man being able to do it? Why is it a bad thing for a man to be able to do it? How has that affected some of the community stuff, or has it made it even more necessary?
Ooh, that's a great one. There's so many places we could go with that.
Take it every place you got, brother.
Okay, let's take it. Let's take it all the way here. Um, so this whole idea of toxic masculinity is bullshit.
Thank
So
you.
we'll state that outright.
This is for you. If you could hear the chew.
if if we want to say something's wrong with some masculine energy and some masculine nature, and women have masculinity and they can use it in certain ways, we have femininity, we use it in certain ways, like that's okay. So we're talking about, we both have both of these sort of energies and ways of going about life. I think what has been labeled as toxic is really immaturity. If you read, oh, King, Warrior, Magician, Lover, the masculine archetypes, great book.
Oh, you have to send me the name of that because that was way too long for me to remember. You said
Yeah,
2 books that I've already been like, at the end of this, you're gonna have to tell me the name of those.
I'll send you a whole list.
Dude, I'm all about it.
Yeah, and it comes from a psychologist. And as a child, there's 4 archetypes. You're a king, warrior, magician, and lover. And the idea is, as we're growing up, we either mature in those archetypes or we don't. And so sometimes we get stuck in like this either benevolent king, or weakling king, where we're not showing up, we're not leading, would be a underdeveloped type. And then there's the, authoritarian king that's just, it's always about me all the time. And that's where this idea of toxic masculinity came from. It's actually about underdeveloped masculinity.
Interesting.
And so it's not that it's toxic, it just we need to help support it and it to let it mature. Right.
All right.
If my dad was like some tyrant, how would I learn? How would I have the skills? I'm either going to become like him or the opposite of him. So that part of me is not going to mature as much. Now, if
Love it.
you have a mentor or you went to the military or something and you had somebody there and maybe that matured for you. And so there's this idea like we got to go through this toxic. That's just like, that's extremism. We throw that out the window and we say, okay, everyone's doing the best they can with what they have. And how can we help certain people, to men, to further develop that? And I think I'm seeing an influx and a shift in the last several years, post COVID, post Me Too movement, where there was a lot of attack on men, where we're getting some shifting back to, you know,
Well, they say like Joe Rogan and
mhm,
what's the Dirty Jobs guy?
Mike Rowe.
Mike Rowe, a lot of their podcasts and those typical more male driven, some of them can be a little bit more locker room, but those
Mhm,
more male driven things, the younger generation is gravitating towards them
yeah.
and not getting into politics. But I even think this election kind of showed that also, where you had 73 million people that were like, I'm done. I'm done. Whatever your viewpoints are, I'm not getting into that, but I'm like, that really was 73 million, hey, I want this,
Yeah.
I don't care what you got to say. It's an interesting, but how has, staying with this for a second, but how has that broken the male community, like in the past with the Me Too and the heavy attacks on masculine activities? How did that break the male community?
Yeah. So you have a number of different parties where it's like, well, I'm not, to the other men that have a lot of masculinity, I'm not man enough for
Right.
them. And but I'm also not safe enough to be around the women because one of the stat is after COVID, men and women disliked each other more than they ever have.
Really?
Yes. Neither of them wanted to date each other. So in the polls that they took,
Yeah.
they were, there was like kind of like politics and how um, there's been a racial divide and there's been this like pushing of you're either here or there, you either
Right.
support this or you're the absolute opposite
Right.
and you're
You can't be a
a
blend.
Nazi. Yeah.
You can't be a blend and be like, hey, I really think that this is a
Mhm.
problem, and I agree with this also, though. You can't be a blend. You have to be one extreme or the other. Yeah.
Exactly. So that middle ground, the men stuck in the middle. Um, yeah, you're pushed to one side or the other. You either have to become more like, this emasculated male, safe person to be around women, or you have to dive into more of the masculinity and maybe overdo what's natural to you to fit in. And at the same time, I think you do see some pendulum swing and some resurgence back to kind of what's more historical, the roles of men, um, because they worked pretty well, you know.
They got us this far. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
I'm
And
not going to say that they didn't. I mean, it's that we're here.
well, yeah, and this isn't a whole history lesson, but I think the resetting is now of what happened during the Great Depression and World War One, World War Two, and all this was that the men out of those kind of coming through that became very hardened. If you look before that, men would sit around fires after going hunting and be very vulnerable and sing and dance and do all these things that were that might be, oh, that's what are you doing singing and dancing? That's feminine and this and that.
Yes. How dare you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
How dare you express yourself?
How dare you let your emotions out? You're a man.
Yeah.
Don't you understand? Go kick a puppy or something.
So I think there's actually a pendulum that's coming back to before we had that hardening time.
Interesting. I definitely, and Nate had a great question. Has social media had a strong influence on male community changing as well? And Nate says like he does paranormal investigations, like that's become his community. And look, folks, real quick before Mark answers this, if you have questions, you're just joining us, please drop those questions in. Take a moment, do that like and follow and everything. But how has social media changed those communities? Well, I know you talked about the biking and all that stuff.
It's made it easy. It's also made it very easy for men to disassociate and get in the scrolling and not actually connecting. And their access is a great thing. Access, but it's how we use it. You know, um, and so that's the big thing is social media can absolutely be helpful for men, and it can absolutely tear people down and be very challenging.
Yeah, listen,
Uh,
I mean, that's the other side to it is you think
yeah.
you're finding, and I love that you used the term community. I meant to tell you this earlier. I hate the term tribe. I
Mm,
really do because I feel like tribe to me sounds very primal and not very growing, where a community, we've all heard our entire lives, it takes a community to raise a child.
yes, it
And
does.
and I love that you use the term community because it takes a community for us to keep to growing, where, tribal just sounds like, we're going on a men's retreat. We'll all be wearing loincloths and standing around a fire. But if you're like, no, I found a community of men that like the same thing I like, it definitely has a different vibe to it. So with all these different things, what are some of, like, I'm trying to think. So what are some of the things that you found that um maybe other men that they don't know they need that community? I think they don't understand, or maybe you're not a man at this point and you're a woman that's watching this and you're like, wait a sec. These are some of the, is there like 2 or 3 things that you go, hey, if you're experiencing blah, 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 maybe this is where you want to start at, or maybe somebody could point their significant other in this direction.
Yeah. So if we're talking significant others, let's go here real quick. And that is, my wife loves when I spend time with other men. I become a stronger leader. I become more expressive. I show up and I'm fully present with her. And we have an opportunity to miss each other. And I think that's a beautiful thing in relationships, is the ability to miss each other.
Yes.
And so for men, there's just a natural level of accountability, support, and just the best version of yourself when you're with other men. And your wife can't be your therapist. She can't, she's not meant to be that. She also probably can't, or we don't want her to hold all your emotions and your rage and all this other stuff that is natural as a human being, right? You know who can hold that really well for you and hold that space? Other men.
And I don't want my wife, be honest, I don't want my wife to be my only community,
Mm-hmm.
because there's certain things that, I just can't have that conversation with her. And I don't, that's not a bad thing. It's just, look, I'll dime myself out. I was texting with one of my closest friends one time, and I texted him something about a girl's butt.
Yeah.
And it happened to show up on my iPad. I was like, dude, and my wife got like really upset. And I'm like, stop. And we talked about it, and she realized, like, okay, this was not you like chasing after somebody. This was guys communicating at the level of like, huh? Yeah. Oh, like it was that level. Neither one of us was going anywhere, but we were like, yeah, look at that. Like a couple of imbeciles that we were, and we needed to be imbeciles at that moment.
Yeah, and I think the other thing to really look at with community when it comes to relationships, you want your community to support your relationship and champion it. Meaning that if I go to a friend, one of my best friends, I'm like, "Hey, there's this thing going in my relationship, and I'm really upset with her, and I don't like this." And he's like, "Yeah, I totally get that. And what are you going to do to make it better? Like, what are you going to do to make it better?" He's not going to say, "Yeah, you should just get rid of her." Like,
Right.
no, that's not community. That's some jackass telling you to do something that's stupid, right? Like,
Right.
you want community that celebrates you and pumps you up to be a better version of yourself.
I
What are
love
you
it.
going to do to walk back into that relationship and make it right and connect more deeply with her?
And I think Nate says it best. Community sounds more like family. Definitely like that term. And I know you're there for me, brother. Except during fantasy draft, we can't be friends that day. We're not friends that day.
That's
But
great.
that's another example. Like we've as men. I mean, I've got some drafts or fantasy football where there are women involved, but it's still a community
Mm-hmm.
in that sense. And look, we're talking about men needing community, but there are those times. But that's another example of like where we've tried to create these pocketed communities around. And where, I mean, I'm just trying to think, like there's so much to it. Like this to me is absolutely fascinating, because the other side to it is and we're getting close to closing the bar, is how should men, if you have a relationship and maybe you're not, you've gone, your prior service, you've gotten out, or you were doing something and you're no longer doing this, you've got a long-term relationship. and all of a sudden you want to tell this person like, hey, I'm going to start going every Wednesday to D&D club, Dungeons and Dragons. And they're like, you're a grown ass man. Why are you going and playing? Like what are some ways to approach that to make sure that whoever your partner is understands that, no, I'm just trying to get a new community.
Mm-hmm.
And the other side is, how do you also make sure that they understand that I don't want you in this community yet? Like maybe down the road at events, but I don't need you there right now.
Yeah. So I'm going to give you like a really tactical, practical thing here.
Yes, please.
This is how I feel. This is what I want, and this is what I'm willing to do about it. So these 3 statements. I mean, if you come to your partner anytime you say, hey, I feel a little disconnected from other men and a little lonely in male relationships. I want to connect with a community. And what I'm going to do about it is I'm going to go on Tuesdays and play Dungeons with Dragons. You know, it might sound silly, but this is something I need. Right. And so this is how I feel. This is what I want. And this is what I'm willing to do about it. And what that does is your partner is not there to solve your problem.
Right.
It empowers you to solve your problem. And you can use this with conflict with your partner too. I say, hey, I don't feel very connected to you and I want to feel more connected to you. And so what I'm willing to do is I'm willing to schedule a date night with you and do X, Y, and Z. And so,
I love that.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful little tactic of like, this is,
say it again.
One more time.
This is how I feel.
Yep.
This is what I want.
Yep.
And this is what I'm willing to do to get there.
Yep. Exactly.
I love that.
I mean, when you said that, Sean,
I feel like your drafts suck. I'm willing to, wait a second.
What do you want?
I want you to draft better. I need you to start paying attention to players, and I'm willing to buy you a book to read so that next fantasy draft won't be as bad as the last one. See, look, it works.
There you go. But I wanted to ask you, when you said those statements, how'd you feel?
Like I felt like I had a plan.
Yeah.
Like it really felt like I had an organized thought in my head. And it wasn't like if I said that to my wife right now and I was like, babe, I feel like, we haven't done anything lately. I want us to start, reconnecting. And what I'm going to do is start, finding ways for us to go out on one date a month, to start the process. I feel like I've got a plan that I can communicate with what I want, when I want it, and how I'm going to get there kind of a process. I love that.
Well, and just by saying it right now with you, what I felt is my shoulders go back, my chest go forward, my head's high. I'm a powerful dude that's expressing what I want and what I'm willing to do. And it's very empowering.
Absolutely. And it's interesting that statements like that. I'm a big, I love good cliches. I love good statements.
Yep.
I listen to a lot of sales stuff because I enjoy sales books. And I listened to one recently where the guy was like, if your sales technique has a name to it, you should just get rid of it. And I thought to myself, like, you're an idiot. You're an idiot. Like, I got it. You probably sell way more books and have done some pretty impressive things. But at the same time, Zig Ziglar had a name for everything. And that dude was around for a long time.
That's right.
Like he was a god in this. So, I mean, like this, having a strategy, having a plan, and then putting your own words to it really makes a difference. Now, I'm going to put you on the spot. Have you ever, Mark, looked at your wife and been like, look, I don't like meatloaf. I'm willing to get you cooking. No, I'm kidding. But have you ever used it at home to kind of like, push that process for yourself?
Yeah, I use it a lot at home, but I caution everybody about the home thing because my wife and I have worked a ton on our relationship. We work together, which is challenging in itself. We have weekly check-ins. We have clearing conversations. We do all these things that like.
What is a clearing conversation?
So a clearing conversation is a very intentional conversation about something I'm feeling and that I want to bring up to her and clear the air. And it's usually not easy. So I'm like, hey, I need to have this clearing conversation. I put it down on the date book. I say, hey, when are you open for it? and because I want her to be aware and open, because you don't want to be like, hey, we need to talk. And then you're like,
does it cause more anxiety?
yeah, it can. But she understands that we have trust that, like, when I say I want to have a clearing conversation, it's probably about me. Any complaint I have about her is really some mirror she's holding up about me. Right. And so if I'm like, hey, I need to have a clearing conversation with you, and she's like, okay, let's do it, blah, blah, blah. I come in, I have a framework for it, of course. But I won't get into all that. But it's about clearing how I feel, letting her know about any injury I might have and my complaints about her, so that it's not getting in the way of connection. I'm not having resentment built up over time. Like, it's just clearing the air about something.
I love that. I mean,
Yeah.
that just sounds like something you could do. It doesn't necessarily have to be with your spouse. You could do that with anyone of what I would say of value in your life.
Yep.
You know, like, hey, let's have this conversation. Let's get it all out there. But I guess, see, this is me as somebody who's always been an anxious person. Like, the minute you were like, I'm gonna have, like, I would be the person like, we can have this conversation in 2 effing minutes. Then what's the problem? Let's
And
talk.
that's okay too.
Because that's just in my head. We can't wait a week. We got to get this done now.
No, it's usually in the next day or so. It's not
Okay.
like long term. And it's kind of about knowing your partner too. If I knew that about you, Sean, I'd be like, hey, you know, I love you, but I feel some sort of way, and I need to tell you about it. And in the next day or so, are you available? And so I'm gonna kind of like ease your anxiety, because it's like, this is not the end of the world. This is something positive.
Yeah. See you, and I appreciate you telling me you love me, Mark. You can make deep connections very quickly. You absolutely have that superpower. I mean, he's already telling me he loves me and everything. See, I mean,
That's
folks,
right.
look, if you're curious more about what Mark's got going on, intimacyevolution.com is the website. He can tell you about these things. Do you work with people on there? I know you said you had virtual groups for men and everything. Do you work with folks to like help like create other communities, like, or have you been able to create other communities where people are actually able to meet face to face in other cities?
Yeah, definitely. I help people make their own communities. That's a big part of it. Um, so the short answer is yes. That's. I think everybody that comes to my group, the idea is that, there's pockets. I'm always having for me, a facilitator. I'm in groups that serve me, and I'm also in groups that we serve each other. So on like the same plane, and I'm also facilitating groups where I serve others.
Okay.
And so I think that's the recipe for success, is like, okay, I need some mentor, somebody I look up to, a high level group. If it's a mastermind in entrepreneurship or something, then I need my peer group. And then for me, you know, I'm, I'm helping other people as well, because that fills my cup, and I'm bringing them, to create their own. And so in that version, I'm facilitating they're going to come up with their own. And if they have any desire, they're going to, do for others.
Got it. So now, how often are these groups meeting? Like, if somebody was listening to this right now, Nate or Brian or somebody was listening right now, and they were like, "Hey, I'd like to check this out."
Yeah.
How do they go about that?
So the best way is to just get a hold of me. You can go through the website. The website is, so we have two sectors of our business. We have my wife and I's business, which is specifically helping couples, and then my part of the business, which is just with men. Um, and social media, website, links, email, whatever it looks like. I have open virtual men's calls once a month. I have a closed group that's a paid group. I keep it's affordable. It's nothing crazy.
Quarter of a million
Yeah,
per
um,
session.
something like that. So no, and then I have local, and then twice a year I do retreats. I'm looking at adding adventure retreats. Peru 2025 is a 7-day
Oh,
retreat I'm doing. It's still in the works. So yeah, couples retreats and whatnot with couples as well with my wife. So
Well, I'm on the website and I can see like you had Masculine Journey men's group on the 17th. Then you just had Stay Connected through the holidays webinar. You just had the open men's call, and then I'm not even. I'm gonna have to. You have to tell me what NWA men's group is because
so Northwest Arkansas. So that's our local group.
Okay,
So
because I remember the group NWA, the gangster rap group. So I
that's
had to
right.
make sure I had to make sure that this wasn't another. I'm not going to tell you to change the names of anything, Mark, but as you get bigger, you may want to consider
Yeah.
that. I get it, Northwest Arkansas. It makes perfect sense now, but
Yeah.
outside of Northwestern Arkansas, that's just going to have a whole nother.
It will. We don't have if anybody has some ideas on our local group name for our men's group. So everything for me is the masculine journey because it's the journey of a man through life. It's different than a woman through life.
It
And
has to
so,
be.
yeah. And so that's my everything I do is really the masculine journey, but my local men's group doesn't have a good name yet. And so I'm still, it's NWA right now because it's Northwest Arkansas, but I'm still looking. So I appreciate the
open.
feedback.
And look, folks, as we're getting right a little bit closer here, I'm just looking on Mark's website here for Intimacy Revolution. You've also got the podcast, the blog, coaches. I guess the powerful partnership program. That's the one you and your wife do together.
Yeah, that's a beautiful program. That's for people who have
Give us
kids.
kind of the rundown about that.
Yeah, so Powerful Partnership is a program for people who have young kids. So in a relationship, when you have kids, it's the most stressful, most difficult time to connect with the least amount of support. And so it's a course, it's a 6-week course that has like 15 almost mini dates that you're learning, you're growing. And then it has community calls with other couples that are in similar positions, usually with young kids. And now we have group coaching calls that are community calls and the course and tech support and everything else in there. So
I gotta ask, man, is that are these stage pictures or is that your kitchen? Because I bet your kitchen is really nice.
Those were at a studio.
Okay, because then that studio's got a really nice kitchen.
Yeah, it does.
Like I was looking, I was like, man, I really like that backsplash. That's me. But you know what? And if you want, my wife and I would be more than happy to provide any information. We have 8 kids between us, 6 grandkids, number 7 on the way, and we have kind of a 9th daughter also. So if you need to know what it's like to raise children, mostly at this point, we put them on the back porch and throw raw meat onto the porch and just let them kind of like go at it. And then we see what happens. Survival of the fittest in those cases.
Yeah, usually after about 3, it starts getting a little more hands off and just it'll all work out.
Listen. At that point, it's actually where people are like, "Oh, after the second one, it was absolutely so much easier." No, it wasn't. You just went into a comatose mindset that you just didn't know what was going on around you, and you were like, I can't, like, I think honestly, and I say this to people all the time, my oldest is 29, my youngest is 7.
Ooh,
And I can tell you right now, the 29-year-old has looked at me at times and been like, you just let, like, even the 15-year-old, you just let him get away with what? My 29-year-old would have caught an ass whooping.
yeah.
The 15-year-old just, and the 7-year-old just get away with it. And he's like, and I'm like, you know what, son? I actually apologized to him. I said, look, there were things that I thought were way more important when you were younger that I've realized that as I've gotten older, just don't ever matter. They're just, it'll be okay. And he's like, all right. But you talk even men's retreat, we're almost done here. When you were talking about men's community, me, my son, Sean, my best friend, Sean, the 3 of us are going out on a bear hunt. It's not a huge community, but that's our community. And we're going to go out on a bear hunt in Maine in 2026 for my 50th and his 30th.
Nice. If you need any more recommendations, I've got a good friend who does sacred hunting trips, which are beautiful.
What is that?
So there are trips where you go hunting, but you also get in touch with how the indigenous people would have hunted, how they would have, like, what they would have done. Um, maybe they used tobacco before or something, or just really into the sacredness and the love of the animal, and for the animal to give its life for us to live, and all
So that
this.
would be hugely interesting to me. Yeah, definitely
Yeah,
send me information. And as we're gonna close this out here in a second. Don't log off on me.
I
Uh,
will.
we're gonna talk for a minute. So let's answer Nate's question. So do you have a men's community comfort food? Like you're like, hey, we like to bring this in, and this seems to be like the food that everyone men wise can connect over.
I think we hit it earlier. Just meat.
Meat,
Just bring the meat. Let's get down and dirty with our hands,
good
and just,
ribs, brisket, something.
yeah, ribs, brisket, wings, like anything that we can really get a little primal on.
I bet a little Cro-Magnon with it. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So
I'll definitely agree with that. And any other events, I know the holiday season's coming, which to me, this is we always hear about the holiday doldrums and everything. Anything coming up that you got, like if somebody's out there and they're like, hey, this is a men's community to help us kind of get through the holidays, especially if you're feeling like you've lost some things in your life and you need that community.
yeah, so I'll do a short little PSA and then I'll transfer that. So the holidays are very challenging. We think about things we don't normally think about. Family dynamics come up because we're around our family and we become who we used to be rather than who we are now. There's a lot around that. Divorce rates skyrocket after the first of the year. Everybody's trying to get through the holidays, and the stress puts people over the top. It's like, I'm out of here. And so any sort of support you can get, reach out to me, Sean, anyone else, and let's make it a little bit better for you. Give you a little bit of space to get that out. Sometimes it's just emotional expression.
And anything else coming up that people should be looking in out for you?
Mostly just my next retreat. I have Peru 2025, which I don't have nailed down yet, and then I'd have to look. But I have
To be honest with you, that would be interesting to me.
Yeah, so I think we're 7 days. We're flying in. We're gonna hike the Inca Trail to Machu Picchu and spend some time in the Sacred Valley. It's kind of a bucket list thing for if you really look at it, and we have guides, we have all this stuff, and we're playing around a little bit with possibly, when you're in Peru, plant medicine. Who knows? So some people are into it, some people won't partake. Sean, I love it.
I don't mind some plant medicine. If God made dirt, so dirt won't hurt. That's all I can tell you, folks.
That's right, brother.
But I'll tell you something after the show. We'll talk about something. But well, look, man, this has absolutely been fascinating to me. It's just something that I think most men miss out on, especially once we have families. We kind of lose our community because we think going off outside of the house, we miss that. And I honestly will tell you, I think one of the biggest things that's missing in a lot of America right now that used to bring men to a community is we no longer have community bars. That community bar scene is gone. And a lot of people might say, oh, well, it's just drinking. No, actually, for most, if you were a blue collar working guy, like I knew in my neighborhoods, you got done work, you had dinner with your family, and you walked down to the bar. The wives might have walked down also, and they had their conversation while men had their conversation. And when we were kids, we would go down to the bar because that's where our parents were at to ask if we could stay at somebody else's house. Like we don't have that community gathering space is gone for a lot of us. So this is awesome, brother. I truly appreciate it. Again, folks, check out intimacyevolution.com. See what Mark's got going on. Now, Mark, we're going to do this in 2 parts here because I trained something on my StreamYard and hopefully it works properly. If it does, it'll play the show closer and it'll close down and you and I will do our thing afterwards. But at the end of every episode, the guest always gets the final word. So what's our final word tonight?
One single word?
Whatever it's got to be. It could be one single word, whatever you think it needs to be. The gospel is the word, and it was more than one word, so keep that in mind.
That's right. That's right. Don't give up on your heart. It's all about being in your heart and your desire. It's worth it. You're worth it. Stay in your desire.
Alrighty, folks. Be sure to push your stool in. This has been a Second Front podcast presentation found on Apple, Spotify, and wherever podcasts can be found.